So I wanted to do a mini lesson over LCM and GCF. I noticed that a lot of the students are struggling with these two concepts, especially as they relate to fractions and rational numbers. So if we're thinking about LCM, LCM means least common multiple. If I give you two fractions, what you're supposed to do is get the common denominator. To get a common denominator, you have to find the least common multiple of your two denominators. So the least common multiple of 2 and 4 is 4. So you would have to change this first fraction. So the denominator is a 4. And then when you change the denominator, your numerator changes as well. Because 2 times 2 equals 4. 1 times 2 equals 2. And then you could compare these two fractions, you could add these two fractions, you could subtract those two fractions, whatever you need to do. Now that it has a common denominator, you're allowed to do it. So LCM is super important for that. Whereas GCF, or greatest common factor, helps us with simplifying fractions. So if I knew what the greatest common factor was of these two numbers, I could divide both those numbers by that GCF, and I would get my lowest possible, most simplified fraction. And so I'm going to go over these two different topics, and I'm going to show you two different ways to do it. So the first way is probably something that you guys have done in the past and the way that teachers typically solve it. And then the second way is my way, is what I prefer. So if you guys want to use my way or if you want to use the old way, I really don't care. Before we get started though, I just wanted to state out these vocabulary words because we're dealing with least common multiple, or LCM, which tells us that we need to take the smallest number of a group, or we need to think about the smallest number a group of numbers can all go into. So you're thinking of multiplying those numbers. The word multiple is literally in the word, and so you're going to be multiplying. Our second word is the greatest common factor, or GCF, and that's the biggest number you can divide all the numbers in a group by. Think fractions or division. So this is the first way. This is probably the way that you were taught originally of how to find the LCM. So I'm going to start off with writing my two numbers in that starting box. When I think LCM, I think of multiples. So I'm going to take 14 times 1 and get 14, 14 times 2 and get 28, 14 times 3 and get 42. I'm going to catch up with my 4 and see if any of these numbers hit. So 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 3 gives me a 12, 4 times 4 is 16, 4 times 5 is 20, then we have 24, and then we have 28, and look, we have a match. So we've got 28 there, and we've got 28 there. And so I know the least common multiple of 14 and 4 is 28. Now we're going to think about GCF. GCF means greatest common factor. So again, I'm going to put my numbers in that top box. And I know that everything is divisible by 1, so I'm going to start off with a 1. I'm thinking 14 divided by 1, and I know that's 14. I'm going to go up to the next number, 14 divided by 2. 14 divided by 2 is going to give me a 7. Now I'm going to try for a 3. 14 divided by 3 is a decimal, and so I know that's not going to work. 14 divided by 4, again, if you put in your calculator, gives you a decimal, doesn't work. Divided by 5, same thing. Divided by 6, same thing. And now we're at 7, which we already have, is divisible by 2. So these 4 numbers are my factors of 14. Now I'm going to do the same thing to my 8. 8 divided by 1 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 8 divided by 3 doesn't happen, can't do it. And now we're back at 4. So these 4 numbers are going to be the numbers that are the factors of 8. So let me erase everything that we had besides those factors. Now I'm looking for the greatest common factor. So we want the greatest factor that they have in common. So I'll start at the top and work my way down, or stop at the bottom and work my way up. So I'm looking at 14. 8 doesn't have a 14. I look at 7. 8 doesn't have a 7. I look at 2. 8 does have a 2, and that was the first number that we ran into that was the same. So that is going to be our greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor of 14 and 8 is going to be a 2. So those are the 2 ways that you probably were taught before for LCM and GCF. I personally like using these tables, and I'm going to show you how to fill it out. So we start off by writing the 2 numbers that we're comparing in that top box. We're going to think, what number do these both go into, or what number goes into both of those? And right now I see that they're both even, so I'm going to say 2. 6 divided by 2 gives me a 3. 36 divided by 2 gives me 18. I know 3 is only divisible by 1 and 3. And so I'm going to think about 18. I know 18 is divisible by 1. And 18 is divisible by 3. So I'm going to make my next number 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 18 divided by 3 is 6. The only number those both go into is 1. And so I'm going to divide both those numbers by 1 and get that end result. Now that the table's filled out, we can find the LCM and the GCF. When I'm thinking about LCM, I'm thinking about least. Least starts with an L. So I'm looking at the L in my table. So I'm looking at all those numbers in this section that's inside that L. And all you're doing is multiplying those numbers. So 2 times 3 gives me a 6, times 1 is 6, times 1 is 6, and then 6 times 6 is going to give me a 36. So I know the LCM of this is 36. To find the GCF, I'm thinking the greatest. When I hear the word greatest, the first thing that I picture is something big and tall and strong. And so what you're going to be doing is you're looking at this column right here. You're thinking about that tall column, and you're just multiplying those numbers again. So 2 times 3 times 1, and that is going to give me 6. So I know the greatest common factor of 6 and 36 is 6. If you have 3 numbers, you do it the exact same way. You just have to add another column at the end. I'm going to pause the video and fill out this table and then explain it after. And now the table's filled out. So I'm going to use this table to find the LCM and the GCF. LCM, I'm looking at my L, and I'm just multiplying all of those numbers together. So when I enter my calculator, 2 times 4 times 1 times 5 times 4 times 9, I get 1,440. If you were trying to find the LCM using the other way with those 3 numbers, it would have taken you so long to get that number there. So doing this table is really beneficial to save time, especially with larger numbers like these. With the GCF, you're just multiplying those numbers in that first column there. So 1 times 4 times 2 is going to give us an 8. So I know my GCF is 8. Now that you understand LCM and GCF a little bit better, I hope that you are able to work on the things that I assign you a little bit easier, and they go a little bit better for you. So your assignment for today is we are comparing rational numbers. So you're clicking here for this activity, and you're going to be comparing all of these rational numbers in this activity. And so sometimes you're going to have to convert some denominators, so you will be using the least common multiple for that. And then you might have to find or simplify a fraction as well here or there. And so in order to do that, you're going to be using the GCF. So go through and complete this comparing and ordering rational numbers quiz questionnaire thing.